At the exact moment your heart stops beating and your lungs take their final breath, the world believes you are gone. But inside the vault of your skull, a frantic, beautiful, and terrifying miracle is just beginning. For 30 seconds, your brain ignores the laws of biology. It doesn't fade away. It explodes into a symphony of activity, more intense than when you are wide awake. You are technically dead, yet your mind is more alive than it has ever been. Is this the end of a life, or the beginning of a final, hyper-real journey? The answer is hidden in the final seconds of the human spark. Welcome to Deep Science Explained. Death has always been the ultimate black box, the one mystery of the universe no one returns from to describe. We viewed it as a slow shutdown, a gradual dimming of the lights. But in 2026, new breakthroughs in neuromonitoring have revealed something shocking. When the body enters the death phase, the brain doesn't surrender. It enters a state of hyper-consciousness. Today, we are diving into the deep science of the final exit. We will explore the gamma surge that mimics the brain patterns of deep meditation, the chemical flood that creates the tunnel of light, and a stunning 2022 case where scientists accidentally recorded the brain of a dying man, revealing exactly what he saw. In the next few minutes, we will ask, is death a wall, or is the brain programmed to give us one last timeless gift? To understand what happens in those final seconds, we have to look at the oxygen crisis. Normally, your brain is the greediest organ in your body, consuming 20% of your energy. When the heart stops, the supply of oxygen and glucose is cut off. In any other machine, this would lead to an immediate crash. But here's where it gets crazy. Instead of going quiet, the dying brain enters a state of hypersynchronization. In the moments following cardiac arrest, the brain's electrical activity doesn't flatline, it spikes. Specifically, researchers have detected a massive surge in gamma waves. These are the highest frequency brain waves, the ones associated with high-level cognitive processing, memory recall, and peak focus. Did you know that these gamma patterns are identical to those found in Buddhist monks during states of total transcendence? In your final seconds, your brain is performing the most complex calculation of your life. It is as if the mind is trying to solve the problem of its own extinction by overclocking its hardware. Science explained simply. As the inhibitory neurons, the ones that keep your brain from being too noisy, die off first, the excitatory neurons are left to fire without restraint. This is the neural storm. But we have to look deeper into the chemistry of this storm. It isn't just electrical. It is a pharmaceutical masterpiece. As the brain realizes the end is near, it releases a cocktail of neurochemicals that would be lethal under any other circumstance. We are talking about massive dumps of dopamine, norepinephrine, and potentially even dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, the world's most potent hallucinogen. Some researchers at Deep Science Explained believe the pineal gland may act as a final emergency eject button, flooding the system with these chemicals to prevent the psychological trauma of cessation. This explains why near-death survivors often report feelings of oneness, of seeing colors that don't exist in the visible spectrum, and a sense of profound cosmic love. The brain is effectively drugging itself into a state of grace. It is a biological mercy, a way to ensure that the transition from being to non-being is not one of pain, but of peak experience. Consider the global neuronal workspace theory. Usually, different parts of your brain are siloed. Your visual cortex does its job, while your auditory system does another. But in the final surge, these boundaries dissolve. This is hyperconnectivity. It's why people report hearing colors or seeing sounds, a total synesthesia of the soul. For a brief moment, the self is no longer a localized thing behind your eyes. It is everywhere at once. This mirrors the quantum mechanics idea of non-locality. Perhaps in death, the brain isn't shutting down, but expanding to a state where it can finally perceive the true, underlying structure of the mystery of the universe. But what about the tunnel? This isn't just a spiritual metaphor, it's a side effect of deep science. As blood pressure drops, the blood flow to your retinas begins to fail. Your peripheral vision disappears first, creating a pinhole effect.
At the same time, the brain's visual cortex is being flooded with glutamate, a neurotransmitter that in high doses causes vivid hallucinations. The light at the end of the tunnel is the sound of your visual system firing its final, desperate signals into the void. Deep Science Explained fans, consider the time dilation effect.
We've talked about how gravity warps time in quantum mechanics, but the brain can warp time just as effectively. Because your neurons are firing so rapidly during the gamma surge, your perception of time slows down. Those 30 seconds of clinical death could feel like hours or even years of subjective experience. You aren't just remembering your life, you are reliving it in a hyper-real, timeless state. What if the afterlife isn't a place you go, but a biological simulation your brain creates to ease the transition? Let's look at the Lazarus phenomenon. There are documented cases where patients have returned after 10, 20, or even 30 minutes of being clinically dead. When they wake up, they don't describe a void, they describe a highly structured narrative journey. This suggests that the brain's operating system is much more resilient than we thought. It can enter a low power mode, a state of suspended animation where consciousness is maintained even without a heartbeat. This challenges our very definition of death. If the brain is still processing, still dreaming, and still aware 20 minutes after the heart has stopped, then the legal definition of death is essentially a guess. We are entering a 2026 reality where we might need to redefine what it means to be gone. This brings us to the big discovery. In 2022, a team of doctors was treating an 87-year-old patient for epilepsy. They had him hooked up to an EEG to monitor his brain. Suddenly, the patient suffered a fatal heart attack. For the first time in history, we had a high-resolution recording of a human brain as it crossed the threshold. The data confirmed the surge. For 30 seconds before and after the heart stopped, the patient's brain showed intense activity in the areas responsible for dreaming and memory retrieval. Analogically, it was like the brain was performing a quick scan of its entire hard drive. This suggests that the brain remains conscious far longer than the heart would suggest. But why would evolution give us this? Why would a dying organism need to see a highlight reel of its existence? As the famous neurologist Dr. Sam Parnia once said, "Death is not a moment, but a process. It is a potentially reversible state that we are only beginning to map." The big discovery is that the line between life and death is not a sharp edge. It is a gray zone, a no man's land, where the rules of biology seem to bend. In this zone, the brain enters a state of global integration, where parts of the brain that never talk to each other suddenly connect. It is the most whole you will ever be. Some physicists at Deep Science Explained suggest this surge might be a quantum bridge, the moment when biological consciousness prepares to decouple from the physical body. If consciousness is a quantum process, as some theories suggest, then this gamma surge is the decoherence phase, the final transmission before the data is moved to a different medium. It sounds like science fiction, but the math of information entropy supports the idea that information, the data of you, cannot be destroyed. Furthermore, we must consider the hidden consciousness found in patients in vegetative states. We have discovered that even when the body is unresponsive, the mind can still be in there, processing complex thoughts and emotions. Death might be the ultimate version of this, a state of total internal vibrancy with zero external output. Imagine the frustration, or the peace, of being a universe unto yourself, while the world outside is mourning your departure. This adds a heavy layer of meaning to how we treat the dying. They might still be listening. They might still be feeling. The last thing they hear might not be the silence of the room, but the sound of their own neurons singing a final, triumphant song. So, what happens in your brain seconds before death? It is a surge of light, a distortion of time, and a final, brilliant act of consciousness.
The deep science suggests that your brain does everything in its power to make your final moment your most profound. It is a grand finale, a curtain call, where every player on the stage takes a bow at once. But here is the final, reflective twist.
If your brain can create a world so vivid and real in its final seconds, one that feels like an eternity, how do we know that we aren't in that surge right now? What if reality itself isn't what we think? What if your entire life is actually the 30-second gamma surge occurring at the end of a different life? What if we are all just memories being replayed in the mind of a dying star? Perhaps death isn't the end of the story, but the moment the narrator finally stops talking so you can hear the music. We are the architects of our own eternity, tucked away in the folds of our gray matter. Death isn't the extinguishing of the light. It's the moment the light finally becomes too bright for the body to contain. I'm your host, and this has been Deep Science Explained. If this journey into the final frontier made your heart beat a little faster, hit the like button and subscribe. The light is coming for us all. Let's make sure we have something worth remembering.
In our next episode, we'll uncover something even stranger: the Lazarus effect, the science of why some people wake up in the morgue after their brain has already said goodbye.